So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for October 8th, 2020. We'll follow the agenda as was identified in issue 935 in the TSC repo. Before we get to the issues that were tagged, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share?
I have an announcement, Michael. I'm excited to share with everyone watching that Beth has cut the 15.0.0 RC1, and it comes shipped with NPM 7 RC3. So if you want to play with, the future today, you can install it. If you check my Twitter at Miles Borens, I showed how to install the RC via NVM. But you can also go to our downloads page and download a package installer or .msi. And if you have any issues, feel free to just at me, and I'll be happy to try to help you figure out how to do it.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely trying out our RCs helps out the project so that we know when we get to the final release, everything's looking good. Any other announcements? If not, we'll move on to the next section. I don't have any specific board updates, although I will mention that there were a number of things where the votes have concluded recently in terms of guidance and in particular, some of the things that we've asked for. So we should be seeing those publicly documented, and I'll point people to them once that happens. I don't know, Mary, if you had any other CPC updates?
No, I don't have any updates.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on to the issues that were tagged in the agenda. The first couple are ones which weren't tagged, but there was a comment in the issue, basically, asking if we could get some PRs landed into 15.0.0. So I thought I'd at least mention them here as an FYI. Those are issues 34.055 and 34.962.
Are either of them Semver Major?
I can take a look here.
Sorry, I should be able to look myself.
I do see that it says Semver Major on the first one.
Oh.
And opening, yeah, they both are marked Semver Major.
Okay, so release is going to defer to us anyway, so we might as well make a decision. Okay, thanks.
And, I think the call out here is like there wasn't necessarily a specific question on these. I can see that, there's a couple of reviews on one of them. Actually, two TSC reviews on 34.055 and 34.962. There aren't any reviews. So, and they do seem to be related. So I guess the ask is that TSC members go and take a look, since Semver Majors need TSC approvals just to land in the first place. Anything else people think we should discuss on that one? If not, okay, let's move on to the next one, which is 35496. It's lib add event target related browser globals. I'm just opening up that one again to see specifically why it was added to the agenda.
Does it land?
It's still open.
Ah.
So I'm looking, so Anna added it to the agenda, just mentioning in the issue that it would be, oh no, that was that commenting. How did it get it added to the agenda? Oh, Anna added it as well. So I think that one's, again, looking for, more TSC approvals to land, although I think there's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it seems ready to land. I guess in terms of getting it into 15.x, the question is if there's any objections or anything like that from TSC members, and this is a heads up.
A quick point of order. We have some people who need to be promoted.
Oh, thank you. Let me go off and do that. So I guess on this one, are there any objections or? Any discussion needed? Doesn't seem controversial or anything from the issue itself. Okay, none. Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is 35014, which is the issue for version 15. I think Beth had added this onto the agenda at one point as an FYI, and also to mention the one where we were, the issue related to the deprecation warning. I don't know, does somebody know, I think that's been backed out at this point. I'm just not 100% sure.
The process.umask deprecation warning was backed out on master, and that change that removed the warning landed in the latest RC for 15.
Okay.
And then for folks who are watching, it is currently the 8th of October, and I believe that the scheduled release date for this is the 20th, so a week Tuesday.
Yep.
And there are RCs that you can use if you go and check that, as I was mentioning before. So, the more real world usage that we can get from folks, the better we can feel about things.
Absolutely. Okay, anything more we should talk about on that one? If not, we'll move on to the next one, which is rename default branch from master domain or something similar. We've had this on the agenda for quite a while. I know, Miles, you've been tracking what's been going on the GitHub side in terms of tooling and support. And I think last time you mentioned you were going to take a look at maybe Node.js dev, if I remember correctly, as the next step.
Yeah, still just like I've been too busy with a few other things. I haven't had time to dig in. We did switch the modules repo recently. I think we're just like kind of slowly moving repos over. It feels to me like we need to at least get like 15 out of the door before we can even start like really thinking about this for the Node.js/Node repo, because just like we have enough on our plates right now. But yeah, I think the Node.js.dev would be the probably better bet than Node.js.org, because it has, like, I know all the integrations at least there for keeping the continuous deployment going. So that can be a next step of something that we dig into.
Sounds good. Anything else people want to bring up on that one for this week? Okay, if not, let's move on to the next one, which is just been removed. Did somebody remove that?
Remove the label from the issue because we spoke about it last week.
Okay.
And we came to a conclusion to write something about it, but I did not yet get to that. I'm still going to open a PR for it.
Okay, good. So nothing to discuss this week. Thank you. The next one is audit Google account access, which I don't think has happened. So I'm just going to say no progress. That gives us some time to move on and look at the strategic initiatives. So let me just.
Sorry, can you hear me?
You're a little bit quiet. Can you just, if you can, increase your volume a little bit, that'd be good.
Is it better?
A little bit, maybe.
Okay, so in the DSC meeting issue, there were 2 requests to review 3 pull requests that are some very major. I don't think we have to discuss this in the meeting, but sender measure needs TSC approval, and to include on V15, it needs special approval. I don't remember if from TSC or release or both.
Yeah, those are those different from the ones that I mentioned at the beginning?
Yes. So there are, let's see.
Because I think like is this like 34.0.0.055 and 34.962 were the two that I saw in there.
Yeah, those are the two we talked about, and then Mary listed in the chat 34.895.
34.894. Okay, good. Let me grab
895.
that one. 39. Right.
34.895.
Oh, this is the diagnostics channel. If I recall correctly, and maybe Mary, you have an update on this. I've been watching this from like 10,000 feet because I just don't know that system well enough to really like help from an engineering capacity. But it seemed like there was some contention on the implementation and that it was like a non-trivial fix. I'm looking here right now and I see a sign off from James. So I think we need like one more TFC sign off and no TSC objections to putting it on 15 if we want to see it land.
Yeah, I need to review the latest version. I reviewed the version like a month ago, I think. I don't know what's the status right now. I don't think we have any objections right now, though. So I can review this request. It's related to the work I do in diagnostics, so I have some context. I'm not sure about landing on V15 if not having objections is enough.
It's getting pretty close. I know, Bethany has been saying, oh, we got a lot of stuff that people are trying to get in and we're only like, we're not that far away. So I guess that's what's the rationale to get it into 15? I guess it's because it's Semper Major, right?
Yes, because Semper Major, I still think this should be experimental.
Is
like
it not
HTML.
experimental it should be experimental.
Yeah, if it's experimental, even if it's Semper Major, we can include 15 on a Semper Major.
Yeah, it is experimental.
If it's experimental, it's not Semper Major, actually.
Well, that's what I was trying to wonder what the Semper Major part of it is. Like it's an addition, so I can see that, but it must be changing something existing, right?
No, so it was flagged at first as Semper Major because it adds a new module to be imported. The new top level module.
Right. So, but that still would be Semper Major then, right? Even I guess does experimental get us out of that?
That's a good question. We have precedents on that with diagnostics report. We just need to look what we did for diagnostics report, and I think we can do the same here.
Okay. That makes sense to me. I mean, we have a little bit of time. So one of the related issues that came out of that too was, does it actually make sense to have a top level module called experimental or something that we could put things into without having to add a new module? And then I think the path was suggested, like, then we would when they move to non-experimental, they would live in both for a while, whatever their target top level module was, along with the experimental one. So you wouldn't necessarily break people who'd been using it as experimental. It also would make it more explicit that people were using experimental top level modules. I think then, sorry, just remembering it was that was then along with maybe suggestions that when you did a require, you'd have to say, yeah, I want to require something that's experimental. I don't know if people have any thoughts on that, doing something like that.
I think it's generally a good idea, but it's unrelated to this pull request.
Yep. No, agreed. I was just thought I'd take a chance to get some, if anybody had any strong feelings one way or the other while we were talking about it. Doesn't sound like it. Okay, so Mary, you're going to take a look at whether we could do it potentially later in 15 versus having to get it in 15.0, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just take a quick note. Okay, any other things like that we should talk about before we move to the reviewing the strategic initiatives? If not, okay. So modules, anything, Miles, anything on the modules front?
Yeah, so we released a few new features out on 14 recently, including the super exciting ability to now do named exports from CommonJS modules. Not all modules are supported, but a good subsection of them are that are able to be statically analyzed. We also introduced export stars and imports, and it's just super cool. There's like so many new features and new patterns and great stuff that you can do. We recently did a really big revamp of the documentation as well. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with all of this, we've gone ahead and because a lot of the features that we've implemented work for both CommonJS and ESM, we've refactored the documentation to make sure that there's kind of like a whole set of documentation just on like package authoring that talks about all these new features, and then separately a doc that's specific to CJS and a doc that's specific to ESM. The majority of these changes went out in 12.19, and the release team working group met today and worked out the final couple releases and dates for 12.x, including one more Semver minor that we're going to put out before it goes to maintenance that is going to end up having the last few of these changes. So by the time 12 goes into maintenance, 12 and 14 will have more or less the exact same implementation of modules. I think modulo about top level await, I think will be the biggest difference between 12 and 14 because the version of V8 in 12 unfortunately doesn't support top level await. But we're not quite there yet to put a stamp on it and call it stable. And there's still a bit of work that's being done on loaders to make the implementation a little bit more expressive. But overall, this is the closest that I've felt to maybe being able to say, hey, modules are there. And I'm hopeful that, maybe by the end of this calendar year or the beginning of next year, we'll be able to really say, hey, ES modules in Node, we're going to call them stable and you should feel comfortable to use them in production. I think we just want some of the new features that we've introduced to bake a little bit first, just to make sure that there's no surprises. But it feels like, if it was the Lord of the Rings, well, we've already thrown the ring into Mordor and we're all in the room in slow-mo, all hugging each other, and it's going on a little longer than you'd like to, but the scene should be done, relatively soon. Sorry, I got a little bit too into that analogy.
Okay. You enjoyed it though, right? So
mostly, although, the part with all the orcs could have been better. Right.
Okay. Okay, well, that's a great update. Sounds like things are moving well on the modules front, and that's great. Looking through the next list, build resources. I don't have anything to report on that. Future build toolchain. Mary, any updates on that one?
I don't have anything to report either.
Okay. I think that is all the ones that we have in terms of people who are here. I might mention the next 10, which isn't listed as a strategic initiative, but we've met a few times. The values document that we worked on did land in Node Core. There is some discussion going on around extending that, but that we expect to be an ongoing thing. Currently working on the requirements of the constituencies. So we've got a list of, who are the constituents for Node.js, and in terms of, again, being able to have that sort of step-by-step path from our values, who are the constituencies that are used by Node, who use Node, and what do they need? We're working on, the what do they need. We had a great session last time in using Fun Retro to start that process, and the next meeting we are going to continue on with that as well. So again, I encourage any TSC members or any other Node.js community members who are interested in the next 10 years of Node and making it successful to join in and participate there. At this point, I think that is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that people think we should talk about before we close out?
I guess one question, this could be, I think, reasonable for the public discussion, because it wasn't on the agenda. Core Pack. So there's been active work in the Core Pack PR to try to get it together, and my gut is that the intention is that to get it into 15. Mary, if I recall your review on it, which was blocking, was asking for a couple things, which it seems has mostly been accomplished at this point. One was that Core Pack became opt-in instead of available by default. Another was that the repo was transferred into our org, which I know there's kind of like an ongoing discussion in admin around. And then I think there was a question also about like starting to bring on some other maintainers. But in general, I think like a big question that I wanted to just pose to everyone, it's not clear if Core Pack landing and the way that it's landing is something that we would consider Semver major or not. And I wanted to get a pulse of, like how bullish people are feeling about trying to get this in for 15. And similar to some of these other changes that we're talking about trying to get into 15, of just kind of like reminding folks, if they want to see this happen, we probably need to put in some extra effort to get it over the line, because landing a change that big like a week before the release makes me a little bit nervous. I want to also just make it really, like abundantly clear. I recognize that there is a tiny bit of conflict of interest right now with my association with NPM. But like, the team and I were talking about it today. We're very interested in the work that's being done here. I think there's some high level questions about like, if it's the best solution to the problem space of leveling the playing field between all the different package managers, but we're definitely very interested in finding a way to like improve access to different package managers by different people and figuring out a way for like NPM to generally be part of the story. But kind of, like outside of that, with my Node hat firmly on, it just kind of seems like the PR has not had too much noise on it in the last 9 days since it opened. I mean, there's been noise in the last 9 days, but like it's getting close. So I wanted to just kind of see where people were at thinking about it.
I personally like, so I guess your first question is like, is it tagged as Semver major for a particular reason, or?
I don't even know if it is tagged Semver major at all.
Right.
Let me check real quick.
I mean, because my personal take is we shouldn't rush on that.
It's it's not flagged as Semver major as of right now.
Right. So I think, my personal take is I don't think we should rush it into 15.0, right? It's it deserves the time to have the discussion play out, and because it's significant enough, as you said, and especially if it's can go in a later version of 15, I don't see the rush personally.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well.
Okay, so I guess like the one thing that we may want to do then, just to make sure we're all on the same page, is maybe comment in there and just maybe make it explicit that we like, add the semver minor label and do a quick call to folks of saying like, hey, if for whatever reason you think this could be considered semver major, please chime in now, because if we can all agree that it's semver minor, then it's not something that we have to rush for the 15.0.0 release. But I do want to make sure that, like, Mail's put a lot of hard work into this, and I want to make sure that we give it a fair shot of making it into the release. And the 15 release seems like the best release for it. Like, it doesn't have to be 15.0.0, but like, if we were going to try to do an experiment like this, 15 is the right time to do it. So I want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure if we punt this past the 15.0.0 release.
Yeah, I agree that 15 is a better release to do it in than something else. Okay, are you going to add that comment to the issue?
I'm adding the comment now.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's an answer. Great. Anything more to discuss on that one, or any other topics that we should talk about before we close out? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we will all talk to you in GitHub and next week. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.